Hello and welcome to Inside the Americas. I'm Claire Pride. Today we're looking at Donald Trump's chances of being re-elected in November as the US struggles to limit the spread of the coronavirus and millions more Americans claim unemployment benefits. Polls suggest that Joe Biden will oust Trump from the White House. We'll be looking at the arguments the Trump camp gives for keeping him in office, and we'll check in with people who voted for him the last time around. Now, Donald Trump's campaign team appears to think that the more the US president attacks Joe Biden, the more his numbers will improve. There's a big TV ad campaign that goes after the former vice president, questioning the 77-year-old's mental capacity and saying a Biden presidency would ruin the economy. Also, Trump has been casting Biden, who's keeping a relatively low profile, as the establishment candidate and presenting himself as the law and order candidate.
In his quest for re-election, Donald Trump hasn't abandoned his campaign tactics from 2016. Like his relentless attacks on Hillary Clinton in the last race, the incumbent leader has his eye on tearing down his new Democratic target, Joe Biden.
Joe Biden is not the leader of his party. Joe Biden is a helpless puppet of the radical left.
Joe Biden stands with them, cutting police funding.
Yes, absolutely.
Eliminating cash bail, letting criminals back on the street, violent crime exploding, innocent children fatally shot.
In his campaign strategy, Trump has attempted to kill two birds with one stone, coupling together his two fiercest enemies, Biden and China. The president has dubbed his opponent Beijing Biden, alluding to his apparent closeness to China, which Trump argues makes him unfit for the presidency. And the president's bashing does not end there. He has blamed China for the coronavirus epidemic, nicknaming it the Chinese virus on several occasions. And although he once disparaged masks, he now has urged Americans to wear them.
We have experts that have said in the recent past that masks aren't necessarily good to wear. You know that. But now they've changed their mind. If they change their mind, that's good enough for me. So I wear it when appropriate, please.
The economy was the focal point of the president's last campaign, but the epidemic in Trump's eyes stole the economic success that he was leaning on for his re-election bid. The president has now centered his campaign on culture war issues, like the Black Lives Matter movement and the removal of Confederate monuments. Rejecting any attempts to engage with critics, the president positions himself as the law and order candidate, praising the work of the police and accusing protesters of trying to rewrite history.
Right now, America needs creation, not destruction. Cooperation, not contempt. Security, not anarchy, and there will be no anarchy.
Just over 100 days before the election, the president still needs to define a clear economic message in the face of rising unemployment and a deep recession.
Now, the Midwestern state of Wisconsin tends to vote Democratic, but in 2016, Donald Trump narrowly beat Hillary Clinton there. It was one of several states where a relatively small number of votes made a big difference. A few weeks after the election, France 24 reporters spoke to locals who'd voted for Trump, and so we thought we'd see how a couple of them are feeling about him now, almost 4 years on. Alison Sargent reports.
Coming? Wisconsin dairy farmer Melissa Hunke voted for Barack Obama in 2008, but that was likely the last time she'll ever pick a Democrat. She says the Republican platform is more in line with her values, and in 2016, she was more sure of Donald Trump than of any candidate she's ever voted for.
And he got in, so it's a good thing. He's gonna make changes, good changes.
Almost 4 years later, Melissa says not much in her life has changed yet. In many ways, it's been a rough few years for Wisconsin's farmers. The state leads the nation in farm bankruptcies, which rose by 20% last year. And that was before the coronavirus pandemic.
Financially, it's been a little struggle with the quarantine. And also, prices haven't been the best either. This whole fighting with the tariff, I think it's a good thing that he's fighting the tariff systems with China, but it's been a struggle, but it always could be handled better. Trump has a way of like twittering. If he just stay off of social media, it'd probably be better. I mean, a lot of stuff he says I don't agree with.
Still, Melissa doesn't plan on changing her vote.
In my opinion, he's for the small, the hardworking people. And I know people don't agree with that because some of the things he says doesn't align with it, but I truly believe that he is, if he's looking out for rural America and looking out for America, he's looking out for the farmers.
Faith that Donald Trump has their best interests at heart is enough for many voters to overlook his more abrasive rhetoric. Even for Josh Thomas, who was already lamenting national division before Trump took office.
If Hillary had gotten elected, I wasn't going to throw a rock through a window. It wasn't, if Trump Trump got elected, I wasn't going to throw a rock through a window, just because that's just decency. You bring back decency and just common courtesy.
One of the old diving board just.
When I talked about a few years ago, like our lack of just decency and respect, I think sometimes he could be a little bit better model of showing respect to people. But I'm looking more for what is he doing to protect our country? What is he doing to improve our country?
As Josh sees it, Donald Trump has done, or at least tried to do, everything he said he would. Things like appointing conservative justices to the Supreme Court.
And one of the big things for me as a Catholic and a Christian is he has done a lot for the pro-life movement. He's one of the only presidents to attend the March for Life rally, which happens every year in Washington, D.C. He has defunded a lot using Title X, Planned Parenthood, which is one of the major abortion clinics.
While opposition to abortion ultimately keeps both Josh and Melissa committed to the president, other Wisconsin voters seem to be changing their minds. Opinion polls show Democrat Joe Biden beating Donald Trump in the state by an average of 6 percentage points.
And joining me now is Doug Herbert, our international affairs commentator. Hi, Doug.
Hello, Claire.
Now, a new poll in the US shows Joe Biden in a double-digit lead against Donald Trump, 15 points amongst nationally registered voters, leading some to ask whether Donald Trump has already lost this election. How dire are things for the Trump campaign?
To a lot of people looking in at this campaign, it seems like whatever can go wrong in Donald Trump's campaign has or will still go wrong. He's basically been lining up gaffe after gaffe, error after error, most recently retweeting and then erasing a video that showed one of his supporters basically crying white power, which was quite a shocking tweet, even by Donald Trump's standards of retweets. Look, what's going on here is if this race were decided by perhaps citizens of any other country on the planet, that is, if Americans weren't allowed to vote in this election, the answer to your question, whether or not he's already lost, it's a foregone conclusion. It would be a stinging defeat for Donald Trump. But we are talking about, and you have to really underline this, you're talking about the quirks of America. You're talking about the Electoral College. You're talking about this unconditional base, which will stick to Donald Trump through thick and thin, no matter what. And you're talking also about the large bubble of misinformation and disinformation, propagated a lot by what have become, in the view of many people, state news channels such as Fox News, a channel that is absolutely, almost objectively in favor of Donald Trump. So the problem here is Donald Trump is right now up against the wall where he has completely botched and mismanaged the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic. More and more revelations come out every day. People inside his administration, documents, interviews with people talking about what they knew and what they didn't know, and how Donald Trump, his early strategy was that this whole thing would just go away. He'd be able to restart the economy. Everyone would live happily ever after. We'd never even talk about COVID again. That hasn't been the case. We all know the numbers are surging in the U.S., and Donald Trump is paying a price right now. The poll that you cited, that ABC News Washington Post poll, yes, a 15-point lead nationally, but if you break it down, you look at it, Joe Biden has a 20-point margin that is advanced over Trump in trust in handling the pandemic. That really says it all. We could talk about racial relations. Biden also has a lot more trust than Donald Trump in the polls on that issue. We could talk about crime and security, all of that. But at the end of the day, it's this pandemic which is really driving Trump down, and people are waking up to that.
Can national polls be trusted, though, especially given what we saw in 2016 when Trump defied all expectations and pulled off an historic upset against Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, national polls, you're right. I'm not saying take them with a grain of salt, but because you have the Electoral College, because you don't win the presidency by a popular vote, Hillary Clinton would be president if that were the case, you have to look at the states, what we always are talking about, those battleground states, the swing states in the U.S. where the election actually plays out. There are only a handful of them. And at this point, Joe Biden has a firm commitment command in almost all the polls right now. You don't have to look at either Fox News or ABC News. All of the polls show Biden with either a solid lead or a commanding lead in states like Wisconsin, like Michigan, like Pennsylvania, which really swung the election for Donald Trump by narrow margins, but still swung it in his favor in 2016. That's not the case today. You might say, well, we're still a little over 100 days out from the election. Everything can change between now and then. Absolutely. But right now, there is no sign that the pandemic is on the way out in the U.S., subsiding. The numbers, on the contrary, are going up. Donald Trump may deny that he has badly handled the crisis, but Americans aren't stupid at the end of the day. They see the numbers in their states, and they see that whatever the federal government is doing, it seems to not be doing the right thing. The longer this goes on, the longer the economy with 13% unemployment weighs on the administration. Donald Trump can say and do and tweet whatever he wants. The realities will be there, and the truth will out at some point. So it's going to be extremely tight for him going ahead. He has a new campaign manager. Who knows whether he'll produce a miracle for Donald Trump.
Now, there are fears in some quarters that Trump might not concede defeat if he loses in November, right. And Trump himself stoking those doubts.
Donald Trump is not a man, in my opinion, who is congenitally or temperamentally inclined to admit defeat, to admit error, to show weakness, to show vulnerability. We remember this theme in 2016 during a debate. He was asked essentially the same question. If Hillary Clinton were to beat you, would you recognize the defeat? He was never categorical in saying, well, of course, I wouldn't like it, but we live in a democracy, and that is the result of the independent will of voters. No, he said back then, we'll see. It will be interesting. We'll see. He said the same thing in the past few days in an interview with his favorite conservative news channel, Fox News. He was asked that question, will you recognize defeat if it comes to that? He said, we'll see. He's creating a narrative here where if he were to lose, he wants his supporters to believe that it will not be a legitimate loss, that it will somehow be a loss based on fake news, based on a media that was stacked against him, journalists who were stacked against him, everyone wanting to bring Donald Trump down. He's trying to delegitimize the legitimacy of the American democratic process and its elections.
All right. Thank you, Doug. And thank you for watching. Join us again next time. Bye for now.